Hello, Boulder Bookstore. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your attention. My name is Ian Williams, and I am the author of a book entitled Soil and Spirit: Seeds of Purpose, Nature's Insight, and the Deep Work of Transformational Change. This is a book written for leaders and change makers, meant to address the grand challenges of our time through a single yet simple solution: self-actualization. Soil and Spirit as a title is really a metaphor on two different levels. One is this notion that there's a foundational substrate, there's a soil to the spiritual process. And of course, it's also a direct nod to the natural world. This book is not only a message, but a methodology for designing resilient landscapes both inside and out. What inspired me to write this book was honestly other people like you. For a little bit of context, I've struggled with substance use in my life, about 12 years, and it was masking an underlying depression and anxiety. And as I got serious about my sobriety, I had to travel inward, and I had to do a lot of processing around that emotional content, which was causing my use in the first place. And as I did that, I uncovered a lot of personal and spiritual insights. And as I shared them with other people, I would get the same question over and over. Where did you learn that? Or how did you learn that? And the answer was always, it came from within. And after I shared that enough times and heard enough people say, you really need to find a way to get these teachings out in the world, I decided I'd step up to the plate and swing the bat to write this book. So who or what were the major influences as I wrote this book? In fact, there was only one, and it was nature, Mother Earth herself. A lot of the content is informed by my own personal experiences, but a lot of my personal experiences are informed by the teachings and truths found in nature. So if there were one influencer, person, place, or thing that really impacted the shaping of this book, it's Mother Earth herself. This book is structured with 4 primary sections, or 4 primary landscapes: the internal landscape, the social landscape, the physical landscape, and the spiritual landscape. The internal landscape is everything that is our inner domain: mental, emotional, and physical. The social landscape, of course, directly connects to the experiences and the interactions that we have with other people. The external landscape is a nod to the natural world, or nature. And then the spiritual landscape is this binding agent that ties all of these things together. I structured the book in this way in an attempt to lay out the most linear path possible for the reader to move inward and then subsequently outward. The idea is that the greatest gift we can give the world is saving ourselves. And that process of saving ourselves requires us to turn inward. Each section is made up of many short passages. Again, being a big idea book and really trying to tackle some of these grand challenges of our time, it's not necessarily a light read. It's for people who really want to dive deep and who are willing to stay committed to that process. And that's part of the reason why each section is written or made up of many small passages, because I wanted to make sure that the book was digestible and accessible as possible as they made their way through the manuscript. One simple thing that everyone can do to realize self-actualization in their life is to recognize that the only way out is in. What I mean by that is the only way to end our suffering, the only way to escape the pain and the suffering that we experience in the world and that we are creating in the world collectively, is actually to turn inward and to connect with that stillness within. So if there was one bit of advice or one place to start for anyone who's willing and wanting to dive deeper into their self-actualization process, it's turning inward and recognizing that all of the answers that you seek are already inside of you. It's simply a matter of connecting with them or uncovering them. The Buddha once said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And to end that suffering, we need not only to turn inward, but we need to take responsibility for ourselves. And taking responsibility for ourselves will allow us to do the inner work that will turn us into effective agents of change in the outer world. During the pandemic, a few books that I read were books that brought me back home, some of my favorite novels. One was Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and the other was Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. These are books that I've returned to a number of times, and as things were a little bit chaotic in the external world, there were books that really allowed me to connect with that stillness internally. If there's anything else I could tell you about this book, it goes back to this notion that all of the answers that you seek begin with sitting still. This book is really meant to be a manual. It is not a 1, 2, 3 steps to a new you self-help book. In fact, it's not a self-help book at all. But that notion of connecting to yourself, it's a manual to help facilitate that process in such a way that also connects it directly to your greater service in the world and a greater impact that we can all have in the world should we choose to go inward and take responsibility for ourselves. So here's a short passage from Soil and Spirit. It is entitled Turning Inward, and it comes early in the first section, the internal landscape. Turning inward. Once we acknowledge a higher purpose and come to terms with what is holding us back, we have begun turning inward into the garden. This garden is our spiritual home. It is the landscape where self-reflection and development blossom into maturation and self-actualization. For many of us, this garden has not been visited regularly or tended with any conscious intent for quite some time. Parts are filled with cultivars that we have carefully selected. Other parts are overrun due to neglect and inadvertent care. To turn inward is to spend time tending this garden and cultivating the aspects of self that offer meaning, purpose, and clarity and direction. To do this effectively and to the depths necessary, we must be willing to spend time alone in this garden. We must bear witness to the neglect that has allowed parts of ourselves to become overgrown or underrepresented. As we begin to recognize these untended aspects of self, we can prune back certain elements to make space for more desirable vegetation. Sacred texts teach us that we are always divine and benevolent beings. Though to truly believe this for ourselves, we may require a sincere process of tending to self. In the beginning, we must simply commit to facing whatever we discover head on. This is often uncomfortable, as it requires us to address aspects of self that we have unintentionally neglected or purposefully ignored. This could mean addictive tendencies, codependent relationships, or self-limiting beliefs. Neglecting these pieces of self is a natural part of the human condition. Millions of years of evolution have hardwired us psychologically and physiologically to turn to seek safety and security. However, this has resulted in a human condition that is resistant, if not unwilling, to look at the whole of life. As we spend time in this garden of self, a fundamental truth reveals itself. The only way out is in. Though it may not seem so at times, looking outside is not the way to see inside. The Tao Te Ching suggests we do not need to look outside the window to see within ourselves. We must pass through the eye of the needle to experience that which our souls desire most. No amount of effort to avoid discomfort will allow us to escape it. No amount of resolve to keep discomfort out will stop it from taking root within. In fact, avoidance and resistance make matters worse. A healthy garden requires time spent managing it before we can obtain a yield. Time to realize that we do not need nor desire to be satiated by the external world. It is only that which lies within that can satisfy the soul. This process helps us realize that there is no distinction between internal and external. Torment and anguish are counterweights to joy and pleasure. They are measured on the same scale and part of the same experience. It is these moments of self-relating that teach us how to cultivate a spiritual center. Turning inwards means you have finally come home. Take solace and smile. So to learn more about me as an author, or speaker, or business advisor, or to get a free sample of the book, you can visit my website at www.reviveyouandi.com. That's the word revive, the letter U, BANDI.com. So again, thank you very much for your time, your energy, and your attention. Please do reach out if you're interested in connecting. I love one-on-one conversations. And again, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Boulder Bookstore Author Q&A. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.